Following on from her success at last year's iWrite with her autobiographical novel Red Dust Road, Jackie Kay was back again this year to talk to an audience about her new short story collection, Reality, Reality.
I haven't actually read from it at all, and I'm not going to read the title story, Reality, Reality, because I read that once before in its entirety at iRate. So I'm going to challenge myself.
Reading 3 extracts from the work, Jackie moved from the humorous to the mournful and discussed various topics such as the short story form, how love affects the lives of our characters, and ultimately how we construct our own realities.
I mean, we are human beings, we are stories, you know. All of us here have a story to tell, and sometimes we get to tell the story in pages of a book, and other times we get to tell it to somebody at a bus stop, and other times we tell it to a complete stranger that we know we'll never see again, and it loosens up our ability to tell the story. But I think that our lives are framed and powered by stories and by how we understand stories. And it's why often, you know, when couples are together, they like to tell themselves a story of themselves meeting over and over again, if they're still happy, that is. Not if they're not. See the day I met you. So I think it's really, really kind of fascinating, the whole business of being told the story. And I remember I first became aware of myself, in a sense, and myself being adopted through stories, through my mum telling me stories and telling me about what adoption meant, and telling me about my birth father being from Nigeria. And she had in her head all sorts of fantasies that were her stories. Like she'd say to me, I'm picturing a Paul Robeson figure, Jackie. Maybe with a bit of Nelson Mandela next time. And so I always had this kind of fantasy father that was partly informed by my mum's own story that she told herself. So in a sense, I think, you know, when you're adopted especially, it's not so much that you hand down DNA and that you hand down genetic traits, but you do hand down stories. And stories are like myth and porridge, and stories are what I was brought up on. And for me, they're as important as genetic traits, in fact more really.
Oh, it's brilliant to be back at iWrite. I mean, there's a great crowd in Glasgow and such a mixed audience. You have a real mix of ages here. I really like that. There was a lot of women in their 80s there, a lot of older men, and then a lot of really, really young people. Somebody came along whose grandmother had first bought her one of my books, and she said, you know, she was wanting me to sign the book for her grandmother, Mamie. And that was really lovely. So I really like having a big mixture of ages, and I like the fact that an older or a young person can like my work. To me, that's quite exciting.
Mini-me. Day 1. See, every time I goes on a diet, I remember all the diets that have gone afore me. Like old illnesses, they come with memories of intense sadness. This time it's going to work. I'm telling you why. It's working because my dedication is up there, optimum, second to none. I've tested myself and my answers are all aye. I'm all across it. I tried not to get too down this morning when I got out the old exercise bra for the Piesius diet and was shocked to find my knockers didn't fit into it. So first up, and as a matter of urgency, I had to heave myself to the sports shop. I says to the girl, you should be ashamed of yourself. You're supposed to be supporting people to get healthy, and there you are discriminating. No support for over 36 DD. And I says, it's a scandal. The girl looks at me like she despises me when she doesn't even know me, and she's saying on repeat, not my problem, not my problem. And I says, what's the matter with you? Are you on a low vocab diet? I don't have my watch anymore because I've given Hannah my watch. Today, when she comes for me, I assume it must be the same time as yesterday when she came for me. She says, worked up an appetite, have you? I hope you're not going to be wasting your food today, are you? Think of the children in the famine. When she speaks slowly and half shouts, clearly enunciating her words, as if I were a dummy. She pushes me to the big oval table where all the women and the men are seated already. She ties a bib round my neck to protect the blouse and cardigan that are not my clothes. These are not my clothes, I say to her again, and she says, change the record, why don't you? And she pinches my arm quite hard. The soup is red, and the spoon next to the soup is round. The spoon is not square because you couldn't fit a square spoon into a round mouth. The soup is red because it couldn't be blue. But yesterday it was yellow. You can get yellow soup and green soup, you know, but you can't really get black or blue soup unless you had a soup made of squidding. I don't think that would be very nice. The matron in her blue and white uniform, mainly white, but with a blue and white stripe near her wide neck, says grace, and we must all hang our heads. For some of us, the hanging of heads is the usual position anyway, and there's no effort at all involved in saying grace. For what we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful, the matron says. Then raises her head and looks over at me. She can tell I haven't hung my head and I'm looking straight ahead. Amen, she says, staring. Of course I know that the matron wants me dead. Amen, I say and stare back at her. It's my face she always looks at when she says amen. I lift the spoon to my mouth and then put it back to the bowl. I lift it again and put it back to the bowl. I move the soup around the plate so that it looks disturbed. It looks like somebody has done something with it, so that the matron will not notice that it is undisturbed. None of us talks to each other, because nobody now has anything to say. It seems they've taken the conversation away from us. Sometimes when someone is new here, they'll make a bit of an effort and say something like, I used to enjoy watching the snooker, you know, or I used to write to my daughter in Ontario once a month, or I used to be very good at making short crust pastry, and I used to go to the baths once a week on a Thursday while my wife was in at the hairdressers, or I used to be very involved in politics, you know. Sometimes a new arrival will say something like that, as if trying to remember who you once were helped. But what I've discovered is that it doesn't help who you once were or what you used to be. It doesn't help one jot, not one jot. I'll stop that story there. Thank you very much.